You're listening to the Crochet Conversations podcast with Inez and Mell, and this is episode 54, a behind-the-scenes look at our local art markets, part 2. Oh my goodness, welcome back to another episode 54.
Hi guys, wow, 2 weeks just passed by quite fast.
I wanted to put up a notice last weekend to say that, remember guys, there's no episode, but I completely forgot. That's how busy we were.
So sorry about that.
But, it's funny because we haven't really been posting regularly in the past month or so.
Yeah.
Right? But it still feels different when we know we've planned it every 2 weeks instead of every week.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like I'm missing something, like there was something I forgot to do, even though, it's kind of been planned for.
Yeah.
So it's a lesson in taking breaks for ourselves, which is really good.
Yeah, I totally understand what you mean, because like the previous week, it really felt like I was forgetting something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I completely understand. How have you guys been? It's been 2 weeks. I
hope everybody was having like a really good week,
I had a really bad week.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I wasn't sure if I wanted to share because I was really fed up about it, but I think I'm going to share anyway because I think our fellow makers and creators here listening would completely understand.
Yeah.
I mean, I basically had to deal with a really, really difficult customer this past week. She's your typical Karen. Typical Karen. Basically, the gist of it was that she was late for our class because she takes crochet classes with me. She was late for a good half an hour. She wasn't even trying to log in. There wasn't any issues, but basically she was late. Now, we have a policy that if you are late for 15 minutes, we'll hold the space for 15 minutes, but if you're late, we'll forfeit the lesson, because I think it's a policy that we have put down for a while now, because sometimes people make appointments and then they just casually don't show up.
Yeah.
Or they show up, an hour late, half an hour late, and then still expect to learn the same amount of things that I would have done in like a 2-hour or 1.5 hour class. So essentially she came late. So I waited for half an hour, and this was online, mind you. She was late for half an hour. So I waited, and then at the half-hour mark, I sent her a message. I cancelled the Zoom link. I said, I'm sorry, I hope everything is okay. I hope everything's fine. There's no emergency on the side. Unless I hear back from you, I would take it as this lesson has been forfeited.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And, as per our policy, it's listed on our website. So it's not like it's anything new.
Mm-hmm.
And then she replied 5 minutes later saying, I'm having issues logging in, and this is your fault that you didn't remind me that, it was time for a class. So at this point, I would have said, okay, that's fine. We still have about an hour left. Maybe let's jump back into the class.
Yeah.
But she started arguing with me, and it came to a point where it became really clear that we would not be able to have a class. And, she was kind of putting the blame on me, saying that because you didn't text and you didn't call, you have my number, as though she doesn't have mine.
Yeah.
You have my number, you didn't call me. This is ridiculous. I still expect you to be here to teach me. Mm-hmm. And it was, I tried my hardest to be as professional as possible. And at the same time, also putting my foot down and trying to say, no, this is our policy.
Yeah, and there's a reason why, such policy exists, right?
Yeah. And I think we get difficult customers from time to time.
Yeah.
All the time, actually. And it's easy to handle. It's just some days, the way they come at you just hits you a little bit harder than the rest.
Yeah,
and I think this time was one of those times, where it sort of hit you a little bit harder. And, as a small business owner, you kind of have the freedom or a little bit more leeway to give in and say, okay, that's fine. You can be late. We would just have the class. But she was just really nasty about it. And I feel like I had to put my foot down. And then she also kept saying things like, you should learn to give and take, you shouldn't always be so strict, and whatever. And the thing is, my lessons with her are 1.5 hours, but I always extend it beyond that 1.5 hour mark.
Exactly.
And you know this for sure, right?
Yeah.
You know that my classes sometimes they overrun by half an hour, but
Yeah,
I'm
it
okay
can
with that. Yeah, it can go a little bit longer. Sometimes Mel has to come in and remind me, hello.
Yeah,
set.
Because you have classes back to back sometimes.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and overrunning the lesson would cause a delay in the next one, and you don't want to do that. Yeah.
But I'm also not the kind that would be like, oh, time's up.
Yeah,
Let's
exactly.
go.
Yeah.
I stay and I continue, and I don't count the extra half hour or 1 hour that we extend by. I
Exactly,
try
yeah.
not to, but I don't count that, and I always do that with all my classes.
Right.
Unless we finish on time or earlier, then then that's that.
Yeah.
But she was really nasty about it, and then she kept saying, fine, since you're gonna forfeit this class, I'm not even gonna continue with you anymore from now on.
Yeah.
I want like a full refund. I want like, what's your return, what's your cancellation policy
or
and
something
whatever.
like that, yeah.
So it was really difficult, and I had to deal with this customer alone because Mel was out for a meeting that day. So that was, I feel out of breath just talking about it. It was quite traumatizing. I'm very proud to have stood my ground.
Yeah.
But certain times, certain days, like I mentioned, difficult customers just like hit you a little bit differently.
Yeah, and I think with every difficult customer, it's obviously going to be difficult, right?
Yeah.
And them being difficult, which usually means that they're being unreasonable, and having to handle unreasonable people, no amount of explanation
would make
make
sense. Yeah.
Exactly.
And so in my message to her, I did also say, I'm sorry, but that's our policy.
Yeah.
You were not just 5 or 10 minutes late. You were not 15 minutes late or 20 minutes late. You were half an hour late. And policy or no policy, being late for half an hour with no prior explanation, just not showing up, is not acceptable in any sense.
Yeah.
Can you imagine scheduling a meeting with your boss and not showing up till like half an hour later?
And to be fair, you have had students coming to you even as last minute as half an hour before the class starts to probably explain to you, maybe something happened or
that's
a different kind of situation.
Yeah, and I don't hold it against them.
Yeah, exactly. And there were many times where our policy is within 24 hours, right?
Yeah.
For any cancellation, any changes, but you do give like allowance for that as well.
Yeah.
I think the fact that she just was like AWOL, it's pretty unacceptable, I think.
Yeah, and then she said like, we're not being like she owns me basically until whatever the class timing was, so she should be allowed to show up at any time and still have the rest of the class, and it took me everything in my power not to say, ma'am, I dare you to make a reservation at the restaurant, show up half an hour late and still demand your table.
Yeah.
Like, I dare you to do that. I didn't, of course, because I was trying to be so professional.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? You still have to
be nice about it.
Yeah, be nice and explain it in a way that have to be professional about it. Yeah.
It helped a little bit that she was quite a Karen. If she wasn't a Karen, if she was a little bit more passive aggressive, I think I would be more stumped.
Right.
Because I don't like confrontation, right?
Yeah.
So if she was a little bit more passive aggressive, I would have felt so pressured to say, okay, let's replace this stuff, but because she was a Karen, it was so much easier to put my foot down and say, I'm really sorry you feel this way, but
yeah,
blah 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 blah, whatever my reason was. So yeah, that was what happened. And it's just been weighing on my mind this past week or so.
Yeah.
And I mean, I started having nightmares. I had a really bad nightmare that night. I dreamt that somebody chopped me. I mean, sew my body parts, pieces together in odd places.
Obviously it had some sort of impact on you.
Emotionally.
Yeah. Which is really, I guess, sad for me to hear that, because like, you have no wrong in any part of it.
Yeah.
But for her to, just be a Karen about it because she wanted it her way, and for that to have like this kind of emotional,
impact
on you. It's just it's just sad, that how some people can be unreasonable and you did nothing wrong entirely. Yeah.
And by the way, there was no apology from her.
Yeah. So I was shocked. Okay.
There was no apology, no explanation about where she was when the class was supposed to start. She basically replied saying, "Where are you? I'm about to start. I can start now. Let's continue the class."
Yeah.
And so I said, oh, I'm so sorry. I understand that you can't log in to the link. That's because I've cancelled the meeting. So the link, technically doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Then she said, how can you do this? And so she immediately took that confrontational route. She didn't, there was no apology at all. If she had said, oh, I'm so sorry, I missed it. I'm so sorry, I'm here now. Can we start? I'm okay to whatever.
Yeah.
I would have been cool to just say, okay, give me a second.
Yeah.
Let me reset up my class and send you another link.
Yeah, and you would think that most people would understand coming, with that kind of approach.
Yeah,
It would be more forgiving, I would think, right? Because you already made a mistake. The mistake is yours to own.
I
right?
should have said, ma'am, where were you at 2:30? Where were you? Were you doing the laundry? Did you forget? Did you not see my message?
Yeah, maybe you should give me an explanation.
I mean, we can joke
Yeah.
about it now because I've sort of worked through whatever difficult feelings I have or
Yeah.
I had. And so the conclusion to it is that she claims she will donate or transfer the rest of the sessions to somebody else because she finds it really hard to patronize me and my business anymore.
Yeah.
And then she ended with, good luck with your business.
Yeah, well, I guess like every day you just have to,
Yeah, take it
take
as
it
it
with
comes.
stride.
Yeah. So anyway, I know that was a long story, but that was my spiel and I know a lot of you makers, and if you are somebody that needs to make appointments for work, whether you're teaching or whether you're working a 9-to-5 job in the office, it's just such a disrespect to your time when you don't show up on time when you make a appointment.
Yeah.
Right? So it just baffles me why some people can do that, especially if you're running your own business. I'm sure a bunch of you are gonna understand how it's like having to put your foot down when it's your own business.
Yeah.
It's one thing to reinforce a rule from somebody else because you can say, I'm sorry, that's an order from my boss. I'll let you speak to my manager if you want. It's a little bit different when you have to say, sorry, I'm the manager, and I say no, I'm putting my foot down. It's just a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, of course. Because
I'm not sure. Let me know what you guys think about this. You can send me a message on Instagram at crochetcrochetsg. Tell me how you feel when you have to put your foot down with customers, especially if you are the one making decisions. I think to me that's a lot harder.
Yeah, because the responsibility is yours.
It's
you
yours,
you own it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's a long story. So let's just start the episode. I'm very sorry guys for this long spiel, but I hope you enjoyed my I wanted to say story, misfortune, my misfortunate story.
Moving on to a happier note, let's recap on what we talked about last week or the week before that.
That definitely is a happier note. Okay, so as you can see from the title, we're going to do like a part 2, like a pros and cons. So in this episode, we're going to break down, initially I've listed it, I have it in my notebook as pros and cons, and it's the same for you, right?
Yeah.
But the more we talk about it, the more we realize that we can't put it as pros or cons, because a lot of the cons end up becoming pros and a lot of the pros have a hidden con. So we're just gonna sort of list it as what we like about doing art markets and what we don't like, or the more difficult parts. And then we're gonna share with you guys some of our more memorable
experiences,
or the ones that stand out for good or bad reasons. But last week, if you wanted to know or wanted to have a little bit more of a background, if you didn't catch our episode last week, you should definitely do that first, because in that episode we talked a little bit more about the, would you say, like logistics about it?
Yeah, the kind of process that goes into, going for an art market,
So we talked about more on our creative process last week. We also broke down like the different responsibilities that we have. So like I do a certain portion of things, Mel does a certain portion of things, and we really break down, like I said last week, there was no gatekeeping. We really shared everything about who does what, how long it takes, how long it costs to put a deposit down for this, not even a deposit, to pay for a stall in our market. We talk about like how to get started, what the process was like, and also the general feel / vibe of the Singapore art market scene. So we shared a little bit more about that. So go listen to the episode first, because I think that would frame it well for you to listen to this episode. Anyway, I don't think anybody is starting with this episode, to be very honest. So let's start with our, pros and cons.
What we like, what we don't like.
What we like and what we don't like.
Yeah.
Funny thing, as I was writing this, I realized that I have a lot more cons
Yeah.
than I have pros. So before every episode, Mel and I sort of sit down and we share a little bit, or we have like a quick meeting, would you say? Like we outline the episode together.
Yeah. Have kind of summarize our points on basically what we want to say or what we want to share during the episode.
And make sure that we're not overlapping too many things or like getting too far out of hand.
Right.
And I told Mel, I only have 2 pros. How many pros do you have?
Maybe 3.
And I have like cons like 1, 2, 3,
5,
4,
6,
5,
7.
So, and I think it's kind of funny because we're supposed to like kind of not promote, but we're talking about it. And we, this concept of having an art market has been around for ages.
Yeah.
And yet we have so many negative things to say about it. And I don't know if it's just because we're doing it. You know how the grass is always greener on the other side.
Yeah.
So maybe now that we're doing it, we're like, oh my god, this is hard. I don't know. But let's just start. Do you want to start with a pro?
So I start with a pro first.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, what I like about art markets.
Yes, what you like.
Yeah, it's we get to meet people, right? We get to meet our customers face to face.
I mean, that's kind of like the more straightforward,
Yeah.
right, reasons why people like doing art markets. And to me, I mean, I agree with you on that.
I think it's more more of the fact that I feel like for our brand, I like to tell people about us, explaining, what we do. Mm-hmm. And I don't know whether is it because of what we sell, how our products are like, so I feel like it kind of, you need that sort of explanation. You need to kind of like draw people in to understand your brand, who we are, and what we are doing and what we are selling.
I guess it's easier to sort of sell the brand story.
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, because as an introvert, meeting people can be pretty daunting. Once I get started, once things are set up, once I've sat down and, I've taken a deep breath and people
Getting
start streaming in.
Yeah, right mindset, right?
Then to me that's exciting because I get to, like you say, talk to people and see their faces. But it's always daunting for me first. So if you ask me, I would say no, I don't like that portion of it.
Yeah.
I don't think it's entirely true because I do enjoy an aspect of that, especially if they come to us and say, hi, I am, ABCDEFG on Instagram that I text you all the time. And then suddenly you're like, oh, you are ABC,
right?
whatever that name is, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's exciting for me. I guess for me, a very, very big pro to kind of play on what you're saying is it's sort of the best form of advertisement.
Right.
I think. Although a very big con that's attached to that is that it costs money.
Right.
And money that you might not always recoup. Because I don't know whether we mentioned... Oh yeah, we did mention this in the previous episode.
Yeah.
One event can cost us up to $400. So we have to pay $400 to even be registered as part of any art market. And that is sort of the benchmark.
The market rate, you're saying? Yeah.
That's sort of like the standard rate. It might be a little bit more, it might be a little bit less, but that's sort of the market rate that we pay. So to me, if we have more than one of these art markets a month, say 2 or 3, that's like say 400 times 3 events, that could be $1,000 that we're paying that we might not always recoup. I don't think we will sell nothing, but ultimately if we only earn like 20% of that $1,000, it's still money that we are putting out as a form of advertisement.
Yeah.
Just for them to be able to walk past and see our stuff. So to me, that's kind of like the pros balance out the cons in that way. So it's kind of like no one wins in this case.
Yeah, you sort of break even in that sense, right? Basically whatever money that I'm not getting back, I would probably put that into
towards
marketing costs. Right.
So when we submit our finance for like whatever money that we don't earn, it goes under marketing.
Right.
So I don't want to look at what our marketing budget is, because all the money that we do not earn back,
Yeah.
I put it under marketing.
Yeah, but I guess that's like you mentioned, one reason why we still go back to do art markets, because there is that understanding that you get new customers from there.
That's true.
You get to increase that brand awareness.
It's the gamble that we could be getting new customers from this, which we do. But if it's one every hour and the event only lasts for 6 hours a day, that's like 6 customers. And this is trying to be very realistic about things.
Yeah.
If we get more customers, like new customers, then okay, so be it. But let's just say in the worst case scenario, always be, always overestimate your losses, right? They say.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
So if I'm overestimating my losses, I would say 1 new customer or 1 sale per hour.
Yeah.
And if it's $10 a sale, that's barely anything.
Yeah, and of course we have to remember, having that brand awareness. At the end of the day, we want it to still translate to sales, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Because we still are a business, that's running.
And I think the only reason why we're so focused so heavily on we must make that sale is because it costs a bomb to be a part of it.
Yeah.
There's some events in the past that was $100. You pay $100 and you set up a booth and you are a part of this event. So $100 in sales is not a lot. It's not too big a target to hit.
Right. Yes.
But when it's $400 to be a part of it, and this is not inclusive of any other cost that goes along with it, like parking or driving or road or the highway toll that we pay. $100 is barely a quarter.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult in that sense. So yeah, that's my pro and my con. I will say that as of this moment, I'm still trying to focus on the pro of it, which is why we still do events.
Yeah.
Right? Which is why we still do art markets. But it's a con that I'm willing to take. It's a risk that I'm willing to take, but it's really sad that I have to take that risk. And so I do feel a bit depressed, although I know, I kid you not, Mel and I sit down before every one of these, like when we get an email saying, oh, there's a new art market happening.
Yeah.
It's whatever, $450 to be a part of. Mel and I will sit down and say, I think we should skip it.
Yeah.
Do you think we should skip it? And then the more we talk, we always conclude, no, we shouldn't skip it.
Yeah.
Because we do need newer customers. We're quite small still. We need people. We need to get them to follow our Instagram, to, give us a like and a share and whatever else we do.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of time, and effort goes into strategizing and trying to plan on how, we can cover, the cost of the booth. Definitely. Like, be it, bringing a certain type of products or
That's
something.
Right, yeah. Or shifting the price points of what we bring. And so that will lead me into my second pro, actually. And that the reason why we still decide to do it is because I feel, or at least in my opinion, I get a better gauge of what people are liking.
Yeah.
I get to physically see what they pick up and what they put down, and how many times people pick that same one thing up, or the certain kind of colors that people tend to gravitate towards.
Yeah.
Like I've noticed people don't like yellows or browns, or at least, and this is only in the Singapore context, right?
Right.
I noticed that our customers or people don't like the browns or the yellows or the mustard. They like the blues and the greens and the navies and the blacks and the whites,
Yeah.
But in order to do that, it's very tiring because you need to constantly be very hyper aware of what people are doing at your booth.
Yeah, you're constantly gathering and doing that market research
Yeah,
while you're
exactly.
physically there. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's not just a matter of we set up a booth and we sit back and we relax and wait for people to come to us. I feel like, or at least that's how I work.
Yeah.
I'm always, watching what they pick up, watching what they do. And also when they go to my neighbor's booth, the booth beside us, I'm also seeing what they pick up. And I start to notice like a trend that certain people who look a certain way, who dress a certain way, will pick up certain things.
It's funny because now that you're mentioning this, I think we both do. We are both doing what we do best in a different way to achieve the same result in a way. So,
how would you elaborate that?
Yeah, because what you're saying is you are kind of like behind the scenes, observing them from like sort of afar, right? For me, because I guess I'm more extrovert, so
Yeah,
I would,
you are
I would
very-
definitely approach them. I'll ask like, you know, I would ask them questions and try to get that sort of information from them
Oh, I
directly.
see. Yeah,
you know,
yeah, yeah,
because I maybe it's just in the Singapore context, but most customers like to browse. They don't really
That's
like to
true.
engage in conversations. That's what I've realized.
They're more like me. They're more introvert.
Yeah, yeah. Or at least that's how people here shop, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So, but if you go up to them and kind of engage in a
Start
conversation,
talking,
yeah,
yeah.
you know, they're not, they won't really shy away from talking to you.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like that is my way of like approaching them and saying, oh,
Right.
like, are you here to buy something? You know,
Are you looking for something
yeah,
specific?
exactly. And most of the time, I do get some sort of market research on like what they
Right.
like, what they don't like.
Yeah, because they start sharing what they're
Yeah.
looking for and things like that.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so it's so funny that we sort of work the same way, because I do know that there are times where I will notice something and I want to share it with Mel, so I will turn to her and say, do you know what? This is the 4th time somebody has, done,
Yeah.
let's say this.
Yeah.
And then Mel will be like, oh my god, somebody asked me about that
Yeah,
earlier.
yeah.
And so I think it's a good balance, because if we're both chatty, I think it's very overwhelming.
Yeah, and I think it's just so in our personality for us to do, like, to work in our way in what we do best. But at the end of the day, when we finish, usually once we finish the art market and we sit down to kind of review
what we've learned, yeah.
like, or gather our feedbacks and to share, most of the time I realize that we have the, sort of like the same results. We come to the same conclusions,
yeah.
which is interesting because
We do it in
yeah.
such different ways.
Exactly, yeah.
But I'm glad it complements each other. I do have a very big con attached to this though. And that is, I think that this way of market research for us is very event dependent.
Right.
And that is, are we at an event that is very maker centric, or is it very family centric, or is it kid centric? And so that makes it even more tiring, because then we have so many different types of people, like so many demographics that we need to
Right.
take note of
Yeah.
what they like.
Yeah.
Because there are certain things, like for example at Public Garden, we talked about this Public Garden last week, which is a like an Asia Pacific regional makers market that it's very heavily focused on the craft and the art of things.
Yeah, they purposefully curate.
Yep. And they
the
vet
event.
every single maker to
Right.
make sure that you really are making every single thing by hand. So the people that come to Public Garden, they have a very high awareness that they are buying something that is beautifully crafted with love, and hours and hours and hours have gone into
Yeah.
it, and so they're willing to spend a little bit more for something more substantial.
Right.
Right, like a crocheted handbag, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to just like a little small pouch.
Yeah.
It's kind of like non-committal, right? But a crocheted handbag or a cardigan is a little bit more commitment to
Yeah.
taking care of it.
Yeah.
So the people in that crowd, we understand that I can bring my more quirky art crafty things and
Yeah.
they will appreciate it.
Yeah.
But at say another event that is geared towards like family day,
Yeah.
so there will be a lot of kids and they are not going to appreciate like a handbag. They want more like cutesy like amigurumi stuff, or like bottle holders, or like bag straps.
Badges, stickers, things
Yeah,
like that.
things like that.
Yeah.
So the only con, like the biggest con, is that we can do all this research, but it also depends on where we are, and we can't have the opportunity or money to go for every single event to have a good feel
Right.
of how it's like across our area or
Right.
across Singapore.
And I guess that makes it harder because based on the event, there could be a lot of factors that you need to consider.
That's
like,
true.
For example, why are we selling maybe a lot of a particular product, for example?
Mm-hmm.
It could be, blah, it's more for family, or,
Yep.
there's just basically a lot of other factors that could be affecting that
Yeah,
sales
let
for
me
that
give
day.
you let me give you guys a good example. In Singapore, we are a multicultural and multi-religious country, so we have 4 main racial groups here, and there are, they have equal emphasis on them all.
Yeah.
I'm not even gonna get about whether racism exists. It definitely does, but we have 4 main official racial groups here, and each of these racial groups have their own holidays, and so there's always some sort of holiday or event going on
Yeah.
that is religious based. So if we have a particular event that for some reason this year is close to a cultural event for one cultural group, then we're going to see less of that people browsing because they're going to be busy at their own event, their own religious, whatever practices they need. They will be absent from our art market because they are, taking the time to do what they need for their religion and their own personal practices.
Yeah.
So we see less of a certain kind of people, and that skews what we understand that people like.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think, that's also a big factor before we do we apply for any art market. We always see, is there any big event going on?
Yeah.
Is
there
any
upcoming holidays? Yeah.
Exactly. That's not just from our religion or our, race. Is there, from somebody else that we need to be aware of? And is it too close? Would it be difficult for them? Like the Muslims, they fast for a month, certain time a year. Do we really want to be doing an art market then when they are out? Will it be difficult for them?
Yeah.
Should we maybe postpone and do it in another event where it's more fair for everybody? But because we're such a multicultural place, it's kind of difficult to cater to everything and everyone.
That's just the way it is, yeah.
Yep. So that's why I say that it's very event dependent.
Yes.
Okay, I think we're dragging it a little bit longer here. We're already at the half an hour mark. That's how late this girl was for my class. I still can't get over that.
FYI.
Yep, so by the time you listen to this point of our episode, she still hasn't showed up for our class.
Yeah, not only that, she hasn't notified you, she hasn't contacted you.
So anyway,
move on.
Let's move on to a final pro and con that I've written down for myself. And that is, we make friends with other makers.
Right.
Like really good friends. And we also make enemies with other makers. I wouldn't say enemy. I think enemy is a little bit strong of a word.
Right.
But you do get people who are not happy for your success.
Right.
And you do meet nasty people that way. I mean, you meet all sorts of people, right? So you have to be open to the idea that when you are at a market, you are basically showcasing your intellectual property. Whatever you make and all your hard work is there on display for not just the customers, but for the other makers who are maybe not so happy for your success and are trying to, I wouldn't say copy, but mimic what you do in your product.
Right.
We definitely have one or two people in Singapore who does this for us. Every time we put out a new product, they follow suit with something almost identical. And I know it's my pattern because they're following it exactly the way I make it.
Yeah.
And as a maker, you understand when you see a pattern that's identical to yours, made the same way, because you can recognize the stitches, you know that somebody has reverse engineered your shit.
Yeah.
It's different from making two similar products. It's not that, it's when they mimic it exactly.
Yeah, and we have had people coming back to us showing us this product that is obviously not ours, but they think it's ours. So
And so when you go for art markets, you open up yourself that way. And there are a lot of makers who wouldn't sign up as a vendor, or wouldn't sign up as they wouldn't register for a booth, but they will go as an audience,
right,
as the customer base, right?
Yeah.
They will come in as part of the crowd, and they would pick up your stuff and browse, and it's very, very clear who does this and who doesn't. Because sometimes people will pick up our crochet stuff and they would really scrutinize it, and they would stare at it and flip it inside out and upside down and back and forth.
Over time, that's how I recognize whether this person is a maker or not.
Yep.
Right.
And you can see them counting your rows and you can see them counting your stitches. And so then to make it a little bit more obvious that, hey, I'm watching you, I will say, oh, you crochet as well then, I can see.
Yeah.
And then, they... sometimes they get a bit taken aback.
Yeah, taken aback, yeah.
Sometimes they put it down and say, oh, yes, yes, and then they walk away. Or other times, they straight up ask you, what's your pattern? What pattern do you use? Is this your own pattern?
What stitch is this?
What stitch is this?
Yeah.
And so sometimes I feel a need to say, I don't have the information right now, but if you want to, you can email me, right? Or find me on Instagram. At least I can track who they are in that sense.
Right.
So while we are open to meeting new friends and new people, there are also others who, you're not going to meet two nice people.
Yeah. I mean,
and
let's be realistic about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes if your booth, it's happened to us where our booth was really busy, and it just so happens that the booth beside us is slightly more quiet, say there's no one there, they get very territorial about their space, and they become very passive aggressive about our customers cannot cross that invisible border
Yeah.
to where they are, to their side of the booth.
Yeah.
And it's just, can you chill? Because when you guys are busy and we have no one, like, I don't care if they are knocking against our table.
Right.
As long as they don't knock anything over, this is a public space. They're allowed to be wherever they want to be.
Yeah. I mean, we can't help it either, right? If there's no space and there's like a lot of people, right?
Or you know the worst part is they start taking their boxes and putting them really, really close to us just to take up more space to sort of like intimidate us into like, hey, watch your space or whatever, you know.
So funny.
So every time we have really nice people beside us, I'm very thankful and very grateful.
Yeah.
And I make it a point to be friends with them.
Yeah. Well, most of the time I would say that I guess there's like some sort of understanding and they are usually pretty friendly. So,
Yeah. They usually are. The ones that are not are far and few between. Maybe not too far, not too few between. But they are not as many as the nice people.
Yeah.
But you remember them. You remember them more. You know, you definitely
for sure.
So, we are going to share a little bit more about specific incidences that happen. They could be good or they could be bad or they could just be interesting. And I think these, you know, experiences would highlight a little bit more about the pros and cons. Because I was talking to Mel before this off I almost said camera, off the microphone, and I was asking, are we clear enough? Do you think we've given like a good enough example? And then Mel was like, well, we're gonna share our experiences anyway, and you will be able to find the pros and cons in all of these experiences.
Right.
You know, it's more nuanced to share the experience itself.
Yeah. In a sense that it's easier to explain, and I guess like for people to have an understanding of why, you know, we like or don't like, you know, from participating in the art market.
And it's not so factual, like,
right,
here's a list of the pros,
Yeah.
here's a list of the cons. Now, you know, whichever one outweighs the other, that's the one you should go for. You know, but it's, yeah, you're right, it's not like that.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's start the next portion of our episode where we share our most memorable experiences.
Yeah.
I have a few. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Wow. Okay.
6 different experiences.
I
or
don't
like
think
the
I
most.
have that many, but yeah.
Well, I have 1 or 2 that overlaps with you, I think.
Yeah.
So let's see. Let me look at my list. Let's share our very first art market.
Yeah, I think that is pretty memorable for sure.
It's. Would you say it was embarrassing?
I mean, now looking back at it, I think, yeah, I would think so.
I'm a little bit embarrassed about our very first experience. Nothing crazy happened, so don't think that something insane happened. Nothing happened, but it was the way we went about it that it's so cringeworthy, I think.
But it's so normal, I think, in a way that for somebody who starts,
like who's never done anything,
who's never done it before, I think our reaction and how we prepared for it is pretty
to be expected.
Yeah, pretty normal.
Okay, so basically, like I said, nothing crazy happened. It's just that we were very unprepared. We were
overly prepared.
We were overly prepared, but at the same time not prepared for it.
Yeah,
like we were overly.
That's how I felt about it. Yeah.
Yeah, but I've broken it down into we were prepared physically. We had everything we needed ready to go, but emotionally we didn't know what to expect.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
So we were a real mess. We didn't know how to read the crowd, like I mentioned. We didn't know where, we didn't have any sort of expectation. We didn't know how to curate a table. We certainly didn't know anything about visual merchandising.
Yeah, I think the setup was... after that, what we realized was the setup
was chaotic.
Yeah,
we had stuff everywhere. We brought every single kind of whatever we had. Basically, we brought it to the event. Our table was full of colors. It was messy. It was overwhelming. And if I walked past our booth now, back then, I would be so embarrassed. I would walk away. I'd be like, ew, yuck, this brand knows nothing. And it was very clear that this was our first event ever because our friends were coming by.
Yeah.
So that was fun because a few of our friends came by. Every hour, on the hour, there was somebody, some friend who...
Yeah. Also because we were really excited about it, so we told everybody.
Yeah.
Like, our family came down as well. I mean, everybody was being really supportive, right?
Yeah. And so where this event was located, it was along the street, but it was in the middle of town. So we were in between buildings. And if you've ever been to Singapore, Singapore is covered in tall buildings. So there's everywhere you look, there's like tall buildings. We are really like a city. So it was in between a couple tall buildings. It was on this really busy stretch of road, but they lined us along the side of a building.
Yeah.
So it wasn't exactly a destination. People were walking through this corridor to...
Yeah.
It's like
It
kind of
was
like a indoor-outdoor area.
Yeah, kind of like a busy crossroad where people, if they had to get from one building to another building, they definitely had to walk.
Yeah, it was
through
at the
this
big.
street.
It was at the major intersection
Yeah.
of like human traffic. So we knew that there would be a lot of people.
Right.
But because the people are just walking by, they don't. Our event is not their destination. We happen to be there as they were crossing the road to go.
Yeah.
And we were stationed in front of a really big, prominent art school. So there were students too who clearly had no money to buy because they're students. So it was just really, really chaotic. We were really tired. Our friends were there, so we were talking all day. It was it was a tented event, but it was outdoors.
Yeah.
So we didn't really drink any water that much. We didn't eat a lot. People would bring food to us, but we just had no appetite to eat.
Yeah.
There was once, I think like 4 or 5 people were coming to us at once. They were trying to get custom orders from us. We didn't really have a good system. We didn't
Yeah.
know how to delegate responsibilities.
Yeah. And like, because we were so excited, I think we literally spoke to every person that was like passing by our booth, you know. And I think
As long as they stopped for a second, we were like, "Hi,
Yeah, in their
welcome.
faces.
Like,
Yeah.
we are Crooked Crochet. What would you like to see?" You know.
Yeah.
Now,
I think that really depleted our energy.
you're right.
Yeah.
So I was gonna say that now we sort of know how to read people a little bit more. We're a
Yeah.
little bit more aware of how customers look like when they just want to walk past you,
Yeah.
or when they actually stop and want to look.
Yeah, and they are actually interested
Yeah.
in, you know, maybe hearing more about your stuff.
Yeah. And I will share a funny like side story. When we were at that very first event, there was somebody from the press who took a photo of us
Right.
at the booth. And we had no idea that this happened. We had no idea that our photo was being taken. And it was from like a media company.
Yeah.
Years late, no, not years, about a year later, somebody sent us an article saying this is from Her World magazine, which is like a female magazine here. And our photo was on it, and this is the digital magazine, so it was online. And somebody sent us a link, and they used our photo as, you know, top 10 things to do in Singapore this long weekend, you know, one of those generic articles, and they put our photo there with no relation to what we are or who we are. It was just to showcase what an art market looked like.
Yeah.
But they only took of us at our booth, and we were both standing and smiling at the customers, so it looked really staged, but it was, you know, it's us. And this photo has been used over and over
multiple times.
by many different news outlets.
Yeah. We still receive images and pictures of like random articles without that
Photo
same
on it,
particular photo.
And sometimes the article has got nothing to do with like what the photo is about, and we don't even know who took it. We don't, and it was our very first one, so the booth was ugly as heck. There was no sense or style or uniformity in the brand image.
Oh my goodness.
No effort on visual merchandising at all. So it was nasty.
Yeah, it was. Now that you're mentioning and like bringing back all these memories, I'm like, oh my gosh, our booth looked
horrible.
Yeah.
And to think that there's a photo of it still floating around, still being used.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's copyright free because no one's asked us for permission, and it's used by so many different people and so many articles. It's obviously on the web somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm just really sad that of all our events that we've done,
that one particular picture,
they had to take the worst one. Well, our first one, not the worst one, but you know, for this reason, this is our number one, to me, the most memorable one, because it's the first one ever.
Yeah, and I remember because it was not just a one-day event, right? It was a weekend or a couple of days.
It was over a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Yeah, so when we had to sort of like close shop,
close up,
for that day and return the next day, we were so sort of like confused, and we were like a bit undecided.
Yeah.
Do we bring home our products? Do we leave it there? We see people leaving it there. What do we do? We
Yeah,
don't
because
have-
they said that you could leave you bring your products back, but
Yeah.
you could leave the tables and the chairs there, and there will be a security guard stationed there overnight. But we were very concerned, like, do we really want to be leaving our tables and chairs?
because
and
it
things?
was outdoor as well.
It was
right?
outdoors. There was no way it could be stolen, right?
Yeah.
So it was just
Yeah. There were like many moments where we were okay. You know, should we do this? Should we do that? You know, very
basically
unsure.
we weren't sure
Yeah.
what to do. But you know, that's why it's memorable, because it was our very first event.
Yeah.
So speaking about outdoor events,
Yeah.
let me share our second memorable experiences. And you are on it with me, right? We both share these experiences.
Yeah.
Okay, so this next event was called the I Light Singapore, and it was held at the Marina Bay Sands. If you've ever seen that famous picture of the building with the infinity pool at the top of the building, I'm sure you guys know it. Just Google Marina Bay Sands Singapore infinity pool and you will see that image. So this eye lights happened at the base of the building,
Yeah.
along the streets, and it was really pretty because they were having some light installation from certain like local artists. So it's lights everywhere. It happens at night. Now what happened was, and I would say, would you classify this as good memorable or bad memorable?
Bad memorable. Yeah. That's how I remember it.
Okay, I would say it's bad memorable too, but there were some really good things that we gained out of it, which I will get into in a bit. So basically it's a 3-day event. It was Friday, Saturday and Sunday, and long story short, it rained the
Yeah.
whole of the 3rd day. Now this event was already poorly planned to begin with, because I think it was an independent organizer group, what do you call it? And they initially on Friday they put us on this under this building that was really far out. There was no foot traffic. There was nobody walking past this place. It was dark. Was
Yeah.
it? No. That was the second night. Okay, so on Friday night they put us in this really far away building, but there was nobody. So I think other vendors or other artists were starting to complain that we're paying good money for this place in the middle of town and nobody's walking past.
Right.
And I think the organizers knew that. So to their credit, they did try to fix it by bringing us out to another area.
Yeah. It shifted
So
us. Yeah.
day 2, they brought us out to be really in the midst of all the people walking up and down. But because it's unplanned and they only got approval the night before to put us there, it's a light festival, so it's really dark and they had really like neon lights. Basically it's a festival about lights. It's a light installation, so all the main street lights were turned off.
Yeah.
So we set up in the dark.
Yeah.
It was really dark. Nobody
Like really, really dark.
yeah, nobody could see any of our products. We couldn't even see what we were doing. It was so dark and it was just horrid. So we had to use like our phones, the light from our phones to
Yeah.
like showcase things to people. Basically, if you stood 10 meters away, you wouldn't know that there was an event happening. That's how dark it was.
Yeah, because at the Marina Bay Sands, there are trees around, and you know,
Yeah.
like it wasn't
Exactly.
We
So
were situated. Yeah,
in this area of street, there's like a palm tree every 3 meters or
Right,
so.
yeah.
So in between two palm trees,
we could look like another palm tree.
they
basically.
put two makers side by side in between, two palm trees. So we had about 1.5 meters of space.
Yeah.
Right? So that's like 3. No, what's that? I don't know what that is in feet. Okay, but basically we had some space in between. But because it's a stretch of trees and there were a
Yeah.
stretch of makers under the trees in the dark, it was insane. So that was our second day. Now the third day, it rained.
The whole day. Yeah.
And Singapore has tropical weather and it's summer all year round, so it's basically hot.
Yeah.
24/7, 12 months a year. And because of the tropical climate, when it rains, it pours. And
Yeah.
and when it doesn't, it's humid. So you don't win either way with the weather. So it rained the whole day and we couldn't even set up our booth. So we were asking the organizers, how would this work? Would you refund us? Because you did promise us a sheltered event, but because of your poor planning, it's not a sheltered event, so are you going to give us a refund of whatever? And they say, oh, we don't know. We just basically don't know. So let's just wait until the rain stops and then we can set up again. Obviously, best case scenario, that's what we're planning for.
Yeah.
So close to where we were stationed, in between the palm trees, there was a little cafe. And I think there was like 15 of us, other makers, who piled into this cafe on this rainy day.
To kind of wait for, the rain to pass, hopefully.
And mind you, we're pulling boxes of products.
Yeah.
And like luggages full of stuff, right? So we're all sitting in this cafe and just talking, and like we didn't really want to spend too much because we didn't plan on like buying food from the cafe. And because now that we're taking shelter in this cafe, we have to buy from them.
Yeah.
So it's not cheap. This is in the middle of town. One coffee was like $7-8. So a bunch of us kind of sat there, and we ended up sitting there from the time the event started to the time the event closed. It didn't stop raining at all.
Yeah. And usually art markets are rain or shine events, right?
Yeah.
So you would most likely not get a refund even if it rains, right?
Yeah. Unless it's indoors, which this event was supposed to be an indoor event, so it's supposed to be weatherproof.
Right.
But because they did some last minute changes here and there, and as the vendor, as like a maker who, like, we follow the rules of the organizers. If you choose between like a sheltered place with nobody or outdoors with the weather, with everybody. So we made our choice. We sat at that cafe all day, and I think that we were one of the last few to leave, right?
Yeah.
I think midway through, some people were like, okay, I'm out. It's never going to stop raining.
Yeah.
I'm just going to brave the rain, run to the car and drive home.
Yeah.
But we didn't, because Mel and I didn't drive that day. So we were just sitting there. I will say, why this is memorable is not because of how chaotic it was, but because we made a really, really good friend.
Yes, we did. Yeah.
So one of the girls who had a booth beside us has ended up becoming our friend. And I mean like really good friend. Like she comes to our house now. We would hang out for like lunches and dinners and suppers, and we meet her friends and she meets our friends, and we have really become good friends just based on the rain.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she's another maker here in Singapore as well. You can go check her out on Instagram. She's a fashion designer. I will link her profile in the
show notes.
Yeah. It's Hug Material Store. So she ended up becoming just a really good friend, because we sat there and we talked, and she dabbled in crochet for a little while too.
Yeah.
And we were just talking, and the conversation ended up steering away from the arts and just talking about restaurants we like to go to, things we like to do, and it was really nice. And I think that's also the reason why we were the last to leave, because we really just sat and started talking.
She was she was the second next last person to leave as well.
So we kind of left together that day, but it was really nice because it was so unexpected. And I do have a few more stories to share of events that would not have happened if we didn't meet her.
Right.
She was the catalyst for a lot of other events that we decided to be a part of because of how close we've grown. Like she's I've got stuff that's with her in her house now at this moment as we speak, and she's got stuff here too. And, it's very nice to meet like-minded people who are very supportive of what you do.
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
So in our pros and cons, we talked about making friends, right? This is really the biggest part of it. And we have really made good friends, really, really good friends because of this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really the unexpectedness of, what you, like, the result of such an event that was not really good for us. And
that wasn't planned,
Yeah, and then, just because you guys kept in contact afterwards, and then we made like a really good friend that we invite over the house all the time, and we spend like special occasions together and things like that.
I guess it's the idea that if we just have to be open to anything, and when you're open to anything, you also collect bad experiences. Okay, so maybe let's move on to the next one. Let's talk about the Christmas Capital Plaza market that we did.
Okay. Yeah.
Since we're on the topic of meeting this new friend, because we kept in such close contact over the years, she did approach us once and said, we were doing some other event together. We were not placed together, unfortunately, but we were opposite ends of the event. So she came and ran up to us one day and said, oh, was it her? Oh, no, it wasn't her. It was the organizers. So the organizer at that event came up to us, different event, by the way, and said, oh, are you guys friends with this person?
Right.
And I said, oh, yes, I am. I'm friends with her. What's up? Does she need help? Like, is everything okay? Because, I mean, these are the organizers coming to us and saying, do you know this girl?
Yeah.
So I said, yeah, I know this girl. What's going on? And then she said, oh, she recommended you because we're giving away a free booth at this other event happening in 2 months' time, which will be the Christmas event. And she recommended you. So we approached her and asked her if she would recommend anybody. Are there any brands that are unique and whatever? And she said, yeah, Crooked Crochet. So they came up to us and said, we've gotten your name. Do you agree to be a part of it? Like, can you be a part of it? You were sort of nominated or recommended.
Yeah.
And then Mel and I were just like,
yes, give it to me, like right now.
my jaw dropped, and so after I, submitted my name, I filled out the form, and then she's like, okay, great, you're confirmed.
Yeah,
and just like that. Just like that, there was we would have otherwise paid like $300 or $400. We got it for free. It was, I don't want to say insane, but anyway, I did run up to her and say, oh my god, babe, what happened? And she's like, hey, surprise. Like, I'm doing it too, and she said she kind of knows the organizer, and this event, it's for something else, so they are able to sponsor a couple of booths free.
Yeah.
So she said, I might as well put your name down, then we can be there together.
Yeah, I think like, that's the thing, right? When you make you make friends who are also makers or artists, and sometimes the kind of information that you get from like the availability of art markets, you don't know every single art market that's happening, right?
And you have information like information pool.
Yeah. So that's something that you, I guess, have to actively kind of accumulate by making contacts, because you just have to do that to gather information, right?
And because we said yes to this Christmas event that was also in the middle of town, I say middle of town, but literally everywhere in Singapore is town.
Middle of town, yeah.
We are just one big town. So this event, it's called the Christmas at Capitol Plaza.
Yeah.
Right? This event became one of the more memorable ones for me, because it was the event that happened right before COVID started. It's the Christmas right before COVID. So this was November 2019.
Yeah.
It was the very last one we did. And because they gave us like a sponsored booth, a table, we had sort of like prime location. So the way this place was laid out, it's in the middle of a couple of malls. So it's kind of sheltered, and there was this like oval, a round shape, like foyer around.
Like sort of like a court, yeah?
It was like a foyer, basically. But it's an outdoor-indoor sort of format, but it's covered. And the booths were laid out in a semicircle.
Yeah.
It's semicircle, and there was a skating rink in the middle of it.
Yeah, because it's Christmas.
The side, because it's Christmas. And to our left. So basically, we got the very first row. We got the very first booth in the very first row. And to our left, beside us, there was a radio station that's set up there. And they were broadcasting live from that location on that day. For the duration of the event, I mean. And because we were right beside them, they constantly kept coming up to us and were talking to us a lot, and they were interviewing us a lot, and all this was broadcasted live across Singapore.
Yeah, so obviously our products got featured as well and things like that.
Yeah, and they bought some stuff from us too, and then because they're radio DJs, they were they were posting about us on their Instagram way after the event ended.
Sort of free advertising.
It was basically publicity, right? And because how sustainability is so important to me, and we talked a lot about sustainability being a big issue for me in previous episodes, and I have a product where it's like a drink holder, like a cozy, but with a handle that you can hold drinks. And in Singapore, we use a lot of these like cup cozy things, but it's made of plastic here. that it's like a one-time use plastic. So I decided to make one to replace that one-time use plastic. So this girl was saying, this radio DJ, she was saying, this is what it should be, you know, and she was like promoting our stuff, and she was talking to us, and having like plastic-free bottles and having like bar soaps, and we had like a soap scrubby.
Yeah.
And so they were really like intrigued, and they were just constantly talking to us. And because we were right in the front, when there were cameras pointing at them, we were sort of like peeking in the frame.
Yeah. Sort of in the background, but right in the middle.
Yeah, and it was easy for them if they needed to speak to somebody immediately over the microphone. We were just right there.
Yeah.
It was just, and we didn't pay for this event, and so that was really nice. And there was an MC at this event, and this fella, because they not only had a skating rink, they had like a little Christmas tree, but this Christmas tree was built on steps. So every night a choir would come and they would stand on the different steps of the Christmas tree, and it was the singing Christmas tree choir, whatever thing. So they had an MC that ended up becoming friends with us too.
Yeah.
And we were following each other on Instagram, and we talked to each other all the time. And this MC has now quit his job and gone to work for a bank. And he recently, reached out to us and said, oh, we are looking to put together some event. Would you be a maker willing to be a part of this? I think they wanted like a yarn bombing at some location. I don't remember what it was, but basically, if we didn't meet her at this rainy all day event, we would never have agreed to be a part of this Christmas capital market. And we would never have been on the radio because of them. And we would never have gotten that exposure. We would never have met that MC of the event who would now link us up, because he's working with a bank, and link us up with bigger projects that could be rolled out across the country. So everything is kind of linked in that way. So
the chain of events, right?
Yeah. So while there are a lot of cons, in between, the grand scheme of things, it's one whole big pro. So it's very hard to list down what the specific pros are.
Yeah. Like this happened that wasn't so good, but at the same time, it resulted in something that was, really awesome.
Yeah. So I'm glad we're sharing these stories too, because it's kind of, like we said earlier, it's kind of hard to really list down like what the real pros are, what the real cons are. It's just small things like this that add up, that make you feel like it's worth it.
Yeah.
And how experiences roll on each other, and so like we build all this sort of goodwill with people that we meet, and just don't be a Karen and things will be fine.
Exactly. Moral of the story.
Okay, I do have a few more. We shared quite a number of bad memorable, right? So maybe we should do like a good memorable.
Yeah, maybe because it's a little bit depressing because it's coming from like a business point of view. Do you maybe have a personal one that you like to share?
Why? Thank you for asking. I do. Actually, I do have one in my list that is a memorable experience, but for a very personal reason.
Okay.
It's a quick story. Maybe I'll share that. One of the years we did my dad, who is a pilot, he's not just any pilot, but he's the Singapore Airlines representative for Airbus. So this was at the time where he was seconded to Airbus. So in Airbus, he works for Airbus, but he represents Singapore Airlines, which is our national flight airline carrier. So he does all the training. So he trains and interviews and recruits pilots. I don't know whether he recruits, but he trains pilots basically.
Yeah, he's the head of training, right?
Yeah, he's the head of training. So any new pilot that comes into Airbus gets trained by my father.
Right.
So he works a lot with the flight simulators, and he's using like the new Airbus technology. So one day he texted me and said, hey, do you and Mel want to come to the Airbus? Because he works, so the Airbus headquarters in Singapore is located in the Aeronautical Park. So we have a park that's dedicated to all things airline. It's not really a park, it's more like an industrial area. So he said, do you and Mel want to come and try out the simulators, the flight simulator, and have an experience? So obviously I said, yeah, we'll do it, right? So they brought us in, and we got to try the new Airbus trainings. And these are not like for public, it's not like a toy for public toy. Basically, it's not just like for public
entertainment purposes.
Yeah, this is really an industrial level flight simulator.
Yep.
So they brought us in, and it's one of the newer, the 6-point gravity thingy. I don't know what it was, but it was
so
basically
cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. So he brought us in, we walked around, and I got to really see, where he worked.
Yeah,
and
what he actually does, right? During these trainings.
Where his workplace is and things like that. And, my dad and I aren't really the closest. There were a good decade or so where we were estranged.
Yeah.
So to have him be a part of my life now is quite like a big step in the right direction when it comes to family relationships for me. So my dad, brought us in. He introduced us to some people, and then we were talking to one of his colleagues who was part of the outreach community team, who I don't know what she does, but basically they showcase, they have a little art market in their lobby once a month. And she was like, oh, you should totally come and set up a booth. So we did that. My dad hooked us up on email, and we ended up going the following week and setting up a booth there. My dad wasn't there. He was I think he was away out of the country, but I got to go to his workplace and set up a booth, and everybody sort of took care of me really well there because, and to be fair, the only people that bought from us were my dad's staff.
Colleagues,
Colleagues. And my dad, in this Airbus office, or in the Singapore region, he is one of the top voices. So there is nobody above him, and everybody in the whole Airbus Singapore comes under him.
Right.
So he's got quite a high standing there. And so everybody that was there, because of how high his standing is, felt a need to come and buy from us.
Or at least say hi, visit the booth,
Yeah, and so they would say, oh, are you, my dad, insert dad's name, are you this person's daughter? Because I heard from somebody else that his daughter was here. I said, oh yeah, that's me. And they were all like, that's so nice, I'm gonna buy, tell your dad. I say,
tell your dad.
You see him more than I do, but it's quite funny because you can see all the younger, the more junior staff or pilots trying to curry favor with me because of my dad. So I just sat there and very happily was riding on my dad's success and letting them just throw money at me. We didn't make a lot of sales. It wasn't that crazy. It was, I think we did 3 or 4 sales that whole day, but we didn't have to pay, and it was nice because it was because of my dad. And while he has never really bought anything from us ever, he shows up in ways that is more more action oriented. If I need help with photography, he'd show up. He would offer, Yep, he has a ton of expensive photography equipment, so he would show up. If I need, help with certain things that he can help, he would do it. He'll lend me his equipment, or he would try to come down to events and see us. He's more like the silent supporter.
Behind the scenes sort of.
He never really says anything. He's a man of few words, very typical Asian father. So it was nice that he wanted to be a part of, and I recognized that it was his way of showing effort, his way of supporting us. So that was really nice for me. So I would never remove that simulator event and the art market that happened a week later is in my mind solidified as one big memory.
Right. I can see that. Yeah,
that was fun. And you had fun too, right?
Yeah, for sure, definitely. I mean, I would never have had this experience if not for your dad. Yeah.
And my dad was very proud to say, oh, this is my daughter, this is my daughter, this is my daughter, So I felt like the princess that day, just falling behind my dad, and any door that you want to get open, it's open for you because of my dad being there. So,
it was really quite an interesting experience, I think.
Yep, and I think my dad, did he drive us there? No, we made our way there ourselves.
Yeah, we did,
And then I was waiting at the entrance, and it was so funny to see my dad being held in such a high esteem, because when he drove into the lobby, the guards came and they removed all the cones, and apparently the VIP parking spot in that place was his
spot.
And I'm like, dang, I didn't know, Dad, I didn't know that you were someone.
You were someone.
Yeah. But anyway, that's my personal experience.
Yeah.
You have one too, don't you?
Well, I mean, since you're talking about your dad, I
Mm-hmm.
think for me is like the idea that family can come down and support us and
yeah.
visit when we do have an art market. I think it's it's nice and it's like pretty interesting.
Your mom is really supportive.
Yeah, she comes down. Like,
She comes down for-
always, like she actually gets mad when we don't tell her that we are
yeah.
having an event
Yeah.
that she cannot come down to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your mom is a lot more open with her support, you
Yeah.
know, and she's that really nice like cheerleader. She's like, oh, I want to come down, like I want to
Yeah.
buy this from you, you know,
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah, send me your stuff so I can mass send it to
All her friends, yeah.
everyone she knows. Yeah, yeah. So that's nice. And because you're talking about your dad, I do remember one of our events. I think the public garden one of those where. Just so happened both of our dads were there at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think it was a little bit interesting because they don't, like, our families don't really hang out together.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
and
that's right.
interact in that way. So to see both of them there, it was a little bit awkward, I think, at the beginning, but they had some conversations and all that. So I think that was interesting to watch.
I think my dad independently decided to come down to our event, right?
Yeah.
To say hi and hang around and help me take some photos.
Right, yeah.
And then your dad
Also
decided
came down,
to
yeah.
independently decided to come down too. And so it's like, oh hi, this is my dad. Oh, this is my
Yeah.
dad. And
Yeah.
this is, I think that was where our fathers met.
Yeah, for the first time,
time.
yeah. And my dad is also a man of a few words, yeah. So it's just two,
Two quiet old men
Yeah,
sitting
exactly.
side by side.
yeah. So yeah, that was pretty special and
That's
interesting.
true.
Yeah,
That's true. I remember that incident now that you mention it. Yeah, that was really nice. And I know that my dad. Sorry, this is another incident, but my dad promoted our crochet classes to his secretary.
right.
Do you remember that?
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah. So his secretary bought crochet classes from us and was taking classes from us for a little bit, and so it was quite interesting because, you know, then I'm not just like seeing where my dad works, but I'm actually teaching his personal assistant, like his personal
Yeah.
secretary.
Right.
So that was quite an experience.
Yeah, I would say.
Okay, let's speed things along because we are going past the 1 hour mark.
Right. Okay.
I have two more things to mention, and I think you have one. And I think what I'm about to say next, I know that you have a similar experience.
Okay.
So, this next memorable event was actually a low point for me. So there was one weekend where we agreed to this sort of event. It was held by some company. It was arranged by this, I don't know what company this was in Singapore, but basically they had this idea of creating like a carnival, like a family fair.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be like a health related thing where they were selling like insurance policies for, you know, different like health related things and like family injury accident related things.
Right.
And so they wanted to have like a carnival. There was two sections of I think there's a section that sold food. There was another area that's all retail, and so that's where we were supposed to be located. So we were part of like maybe 25, 30 makers that had a booth at this event. But before this event could happen, Mel had to fly off unexpectedly.
Yes.
Because of a bachelorette party that she was bridesmaid. She was
Yeah.
one of the bridesmaids. So Mel had to fly off, and that sort of left me on my own. And so there was this great debate about whether we should do it or not.
Yeah.
Whether we should still continue, should we sell our booth to somebody else? But
Yeah.
we decided that, you know what, we should just go on. We never know how it's going to be. I had a friend who was willing to help me, drive me there, and help me with the setup. So
Yeah.
I had to do it alone, without Mel. So it was a bit difficult for me because firstly, this place was really, it was a great concept, but it was not done really well. It was in the middle of a field, and it was really hot and really sunny. It was by the river. So
Right.
it's hot, it's sunny, it's humid because it's by the river. It's, you know, it's salt water breeze.
Yeah, right.
And the grass was really, it was not even, so they clearly had just tilled the land, and so there was like soil everywhere, and then
Oh, right.
and because it's so dry, the top layer of soil was blowing on things, and so every
Oh, gosh.
every half an hour or so I had to be wiping our table down, and you could see I wiped away layers and layers of dust.
Right.
Because we're in the middle of a field, and when people walk, they kick up the dust, and it's
Yeah.
so dry and hot that the dust clouds just plume
It's everywhere. Yeah.
And it was really, really warm, and it was so, and we were in it was a tented event, but the way they set up the tent, the light was still, sunlight was still coming in at an angle.
Right, of course. Yeah.
So it was really, really hot. There was a pregnant lady to my side. She was pregnant with twins.
Oh,
you
wow.
know, and she was feeling faint. And it was, it was just a lot of things going on. And because I'm not with Mel, the friend I'm with who offered to help, she didn't know anything about our products. She wasn't gonna be able to help me sell anything. She was really there so that I could, if I needed to run to the bathroom, which was a 20-minute walk away,
Wow.
at least somebody was there watching
Yeah.
the booth, so that my money could be with her. And if I need to go get a drink or anything, I could leave the booth and come back.
Yeah. So basically, this location was not really central or anything like that.
Yeah, it was
at all.
horrible. And because of the way it's set up, like I said, the sun was coming in, it was shining right at our table, and we couldn't choose our table. So it's balloted, and it's been allocated to us already.
Yeah.
So it was so hot that day that all my crochet items in the packets started what's
Condensing?
the word? Yeah, it started condensing within the packets of my
my.
stuff. And there are certain things that I put in packets because it's like, it's food related things.
Yeah.
So it's like I have a travel fork and spoon set
Yeah.
that comes in a little crochet pouch, right? So because it's gonna be like a food thingy related to food, I have to put it in a plastic covering. That started condensing. I had to take them all out of the packet, but if I take them out of the packet, it's gonna be the dust is gonna settle.
Yeah.
It was really bad. And to make things worse, I only made one sale that weekend.
Yeah,
Weekend, mind you.
Yeah.
And that one sale was because I bumped into a friend of my father's. And I said, "Hi, do you remember me? I am, insert dad's name. I'm his daughter."
Yeah.
And he was like, "Yes, I remember you, of course. Oh my gosh, you're here. Oh, what are you doing? Let me buy something from you."
Thank you, Inez, Dad.
Inez dad's friend, yeah. So because of him, I made one sale that day.
Yeah. It sounds like a really pretty bad event.
Yeah, and that was the only sale that whole weekend. So that was, and then if it's not depressing enough to only make one sale, I think it was like $30 for that whole weekend. I then had to wait for Mel to come back to say,
To ask you about. So how was the
"Hey,
event?
honey, I only made one sale this weekend. I'm really sorry." So that was really not depressing, but that was the first time I had to man a booth myself,
Yeah.
and then not be able to make a sale. So that was very demoralizing for me in that sense.
Right.
And all this while, I'm feeling hopeful that, oh my god, maybe I'll have a sale, maybe
Yeah.
they'll walk past. And then I have to entertain my friend that's kind of with me.
Right.
And
Yeah, because she's there to help as well,
yeah,
right?
she's there to help. She doesn't understand how this business is. She's not, part of my business in any way. She's just there to help me. So I feel a need to also be like cheery and talkative and, to engage her in conversation and,
of course, yeah.
to do what friends do when they meet. So it was a lot of difficult emotions that I had to manage, Firstly, the disappointment of not making a sale, and then, it's a little bit embarrassing too. I don't know if any of you makers can understand what I'm saying, but it's a little bit embarrassing, especially when you have people there and you just haven't made a sale.
Yeah.
You are now starting to get not real, but like to understand that, okay, this has been a waste of money. You are starting to feel the pinch that it's like, oh, that's like $300 that I'm losing, so
Yeah.
that was a difficult event
Yeah,
for me.
I'm sure. And again, having to be physically there and to go through the whole process of the whole setting up and the procedure and everything, and have that being physically tired, plus that emotional, mental
Stress
about it. It's I can just imagine how you feel after that.
Yeah, it was I will never forget it because of how I remember how I feel more than I remember what really happened.
Yeah.
I think I've not had a weekend pass so slowly before.
Yeah. I guess like this is just, one experience or one example of sometimes you don't really know. Right?
Yeah,
that's
true.
the kind of risk that you have to put across when you sign up for an art market, because when they were promoting it, it looked like
it was supposed to be a big event,
really, really big event. Yeah,
they were saying like because people had to pre-register, so there was like 5,000 people have
Gonna
pre-registered.
be there,
There's going to be a big crowd
Yeah.
and yada yada yada, and
Because-
which there was 5,000 people, but there is not a lot of people who want to spend money because apparently you have to pay to be a part of this event, or you
Right.
have to have spent a certain amount of money with this company before you get a free ticket.
right. I see.
So the people that are going are not the spending kind.
Yeah.
So that's something they failed to mention, and it was really demoralizing. It
Yeah,
really was.
and I think I can sort of understand, sort of what you're going through as well, because recently, in our last art market, I actually had to mend the booth myself.
Yeah.
As well. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know that this was a part of your list somewhere, and it's funny that we both, like, what made it into our most memorable list is events that we had to do alone.
You're right, yes. Definitely, because it was really unexpected as well.
that's
You
true.
unfortunately was unwell, and you tried to be there
As much as I could,
much
yeah.
as you could, but you were really not well. And I think with the current situation with COVID and all that, it was just the best
Safer for
and
me to
safer
stay,
decision for you to go back. And I think that as nervous as I was,
Were you nervous?
I yeah, you see, that's the thing. I had to really put on a front,
A brave
yeah.
front. I
sort
didn't know
of,
you were nervous.
to make sure that you're not going to be worried about, because I know that you were quite worried about not being
Not
there,
being there, yeah.
and having to sort of like leave me alone to handle everything, because we both understand that you play the more artistic role in the business, so there were a lot of things that maybe customers would want to
speak,
ask
yeah.
or have questions.
And I think it's the particular event that made it important for me to be there as well,
Yeah.
because this was Public Garden, and like we've mentioned many times, the people who come to Public Garden want to speak to the makers.
Yeah.
They appreciate, and a lot of them are in the arts themselves, so they want to speak to the makers. And not that Mel is not the maker, but she's not the maker for most things. And there are a lot of things, if they need to ask like more in-depth questions about how they can customize things, I don't
Yeah.
think you would have been able to answer, and that was why I was worried.
Yeah, if they had asked maybe very technical questions, I don't think I would have
Been able
been
to
so
answer.
experienced to give them the right answers.
Yeah.
Right, I wouldn't be confident to do that. I
Yeah.
would think, based on my skills and my experience. So, as nervous as I was,
Yeah.
because obviously this is my first time, right?
Alone.
Yeah,
Alone, yeah.
It's pretty nerve-wracking, but I felt that I didn't want you to be worried, especially since you were unwell. You had to go home and you had to rest. I didn't want you to go home and still be worried and
about it, yeah,
thinking
yeah.
about it, right? Yeah, so I really did put on quite a brave front,
Yeah.
to let you know that
And-
it would be fine, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and because I know what it's like to do something like the art and an art market alone, I was worried that you wouldn't be able to like take breaks and go to the bathroom,
Yeah.
or because if you're alone, you can't quite leave that table
Yeah.
because all your products are there.
Yeah.
So it was just it was
Yeah, and you are right to say that this, Public Garden usually is the biggest and most important
Yeah,
art market to
exactly.
be at, right? And we did spend, quite long and a lot of effort to plan, to make sure that everything was right, everything was going to run smoothly.
We specifically planned an inventory list. We made specific products only for Public Garden.
Right. Yeah.
There are certain things that are Public Garden exclusive for us.
Yeah.
So to not be able to be there and having it, I was more worried about Mel needing to be alone actually. Why is this part of your most, I'm curious, why is this part of your most, like, one of the more memorable experiences for you?
Because I was so nervous about it initially, and to be honest, I wasn't very confident, whether I could really handle it myself or not. I mean, obviously, I had to tell you I could,
Yeah,
right? But
right.
whether I could really handle it was a different story. But I mean, now that, after the event,
Now
after
that's over,
experiencing it, I'm pretty proud of myself, I would say. I think I handled it pretty well.
Yeah, and unlike me, when I had to do it alone, like, I only made one sale, whereas Mel managed to cover the cost of the booth and then some.
Yeah.
So that was really good. I think I was also kind of worried more because, it's very like how we approach the business. Mel handles a lot of the back end and the finance stuff and the administrative stuff, whereas I handle the more creative aspect, as you guys already know. And so our sort of unspoken agreement is when we are at art markets, I have to take that front and center role by talking to the customers a little bit, explaining about what we do, and then if the conversation needs to carry on, then Mel would take over. Once it doesn't need to be a technical conversation, I can take a step back and let Mel do the talking, right? Or if somebody wants to talk to Mel about payment and, how to go about like signing up for classes, then Mel can handle that.
Yeah.
So I was also worried because I'm kind of, by not being there, I'm kind of forcing you to take on a role that you don't normally play.
Yeah.
And I guess for me, that was why I was stressed on my event alone, because, I had to take on that role that you normally take.
Yeah.
And I know I was texting you a lot too, like, if somebody asks this, what do I do? Which I don't know why I bothered, because there was no sales of my event.
Yeah. I think, I'm pretty proud of myself to the extent that I guess being put in that position, I just really had to be confident about it and to really take on that role.
Yeah.
And with my confidence, to be able to answer like whatever questions that came by, to be able to carry on whatever, crochet conversations that people were trying to have with me, because these are people who may have been crocheting a lot more than me. They could be like, 10 years experience for all I know. And
see, aren't you glad I forced you to learn crochet?
Yeah. And also, I think it's memorable for me because I don't know whether I'm overthinking this, but I had the pressure on myself to make sure that I do a good job as well.
Yeah,
I wanted to come back.
I know that you did mention this when you came home that day.
Yeah.
And, not that day, but I think the second day. So after the whole event ended, I know you did come home, and when we talked about it, I was in my fever delirium. I'm like, oh, how's the event?
Yeah.
And she was like, don't worry, it's fine. And that was very reassuring for me, because if Mel panics, I panic.
Yeah.
So if she doesn't panic, I can go back to sleep.
Yeah. But I had to, to be honest, I think I do panic a lot more.
Yeah, then you let on. It's just that when it comes to the business, I look to Mel a lot for my sort of to reassure me.
Yeah.
Like, remember, I don't know whether I said this in the last episode or the episode before, but Mel is my idea thrower sticker.
Yes, yeah. You mentioned this,
If you don't know what an idea thrower sticker is, go back and listen to the previous episodes. Okay, but if you know what it is, if you know, you know. So without her around and her opinion, it would be a lot more daunting for me, and I get my anxiety level like really spikes.
Right.
When I don't have your opinion around, because I don't really know whether would it make sense financially, does it make sense logically, does it make sense administratively, how would it work?
Yeah.
So
and this is a personal thing, like how it was a personal thing for you. I really just didn't want to disappoint you as well, as a partner, as a business partner, as just my partner. Right.
Yeah.
I wanted to come back and bring you like really good news, that everything went really well, really smoothly, whatever that you thought that you would be worried about, you don't have to worry about it. Yeah.
And I think I'm glad that we sort of laid the foundations for you.
Yeah.
Initially, Mel didn't crochet. Like, I guess some of you would know this if you listen to the podcast from the start. You would know that Mel didn't originally crochet. Like, her involvement in the business was not a crochet-based anything.
Very purely operational.
Yeah, that's right. But I felt that I cannot be the only one who has this information, this knowledge about all the crochet stuff, because should an event like this happen, which I did tell myself, I wouldn't, if I have to stand there with a 40-degree fever, like if my fever had to reach like burning pits of hell,
if you actually fainted or
I would still stand there at the booth and sell it. This is my business, my sweat and blood and tears. I would do it. But then again, that's not feasible and that's not sustainable for me or my health or my emotional health. So we decided together that, Mel, you've got to learn to crochet at least a little bit. And I'm so glad that you kind of, jumped into the deep end and started making clothes right off the back. So that gave you that, I feel a little bit more confident knowing that you understand the basic of why increases and decreases are important, why sewing things a certain way is important, how to construct something, how positive, negative ease in clothing works around. If you can understand crochet clothing, you can understand probably about anything else.
Sidetrack on that. To be honest, without this podcast, I wouldn't have learned as much or know as much.
Well, there you go.
About crochet, to be honest.
Okay.
Right? Not only as a listener, but as
like a
someone
participant
who's
with me,
participating and having to also do my research and to read up more about it, really helped when somebody came up and wanted to have a specific crochet conversation with Crooked Crochet. And I was really throwing out our advertising our podcast as well. So I hope that whoever who is listening right now is because you came. Hello and welcome.
And this is actually part of what I enjoy in the crochet world, so to speak. It is not so much the doing it or the making products. To be honest, I really hate making products. I hate feeling like a crochet factory churning out one product after another in just a various array of colors. What I like is the education aspect of things. I love talking and delving a little bit deeper into where crochet comes from and why it works and how it's built up. And it's so funny because I am more artistic, but I like the technical aspect of this artistry. So, and I really enjoy that, and that's why these episodes of this podcast is so important to me, that even if we have nothing to talk about, we have an episode once every 2 weeks instead of every week, because I don't want it to end. There's so much to discuss.
And it also shows that even if you are not somebody who's good at crocheting, the actual crocheting, the practical part
section of it,
but you can still love crochet, you can still like talking about it, you can still like learning about it, and it can be fun as well.
That's true. I'm following Knit Brooks on Instagram. She's another, well, I wouldn't say crochet artist, but she doesn't crochet anymore. She just makes crochet hooks. But she makes crochet hooks out of natural wood. I think I've sent you her page before to look at.
I think
and
so.
I know that I told you I want to buy from her, but
One
every
day,
time she puts out, it sells out within minutes. And because of the time difference, she's based in Canada, I think. But wherever she is, and the time difference for me, it's I have to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, log in, and then see that things are sold out. So I haven't gotten a hook from her, but I really want to. But in line of what you're saying, she doesn't crochet anymore. She spends all her time making crochet hooks, but she always talks about crochet. She talks about the building up and the difficulties she's facing, and it's always in her stories, and why making the perfect crochet hook is so important to her, because in her experience, it was the make or break factor for her whether she continue or not. And you don't, I mean, first you have to crochet a lot, and then you have to stop before you can talk about it.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like how Pablo Picasso said, first you got to learn the rules, then you got to break the rules to be a good painter. And that's one of my favorite quotes. So this has been a long episode. Before we end this episode, I want to talk about what our next episode is going to be, because I'm quite excited about it. if you're not following us on Instagram, please follow us on Instagram. Recently, I hopped onto that trend, the NGL link trend. So NGL, since we're not gonna lie, and I created an account with them and I posted the link on our Instagram, and people started sending really interesting questions.
Yeah.
I have tried as much as possible to explain or answer these questions in one story, but I can't really share as much. And you guys know I can talk about crochet endlessly. So Mel and I have decided that in the next episode, I'm going to revisit some of these questions and share it with the podcast instead, because I don't think we have as much people following us on our Instagram. I don't know if I'm saying this right, but I think on our Instagram stories, there's not many people seeing it as opposed to on the podcast where we can reach a bigger audience. And I think some of the questions they ask are really interesting.
Yeah.
And I can go on and on and on about
Basically, they'll go more in depth into answering their questions, right?
Yeah, because we have this podcast, I feel like I have the platform to really delve into the details of it. I'm not the kind to keep information to myself, so I want to share them. And so I feel like if I share it in the Instagram story, which only lasts for 15 seconds, I don't get as much time, to really type out everything that I really want to say about it, or explain why it works and why it doesn't work. So in the next episode, I'm going to share some of these questions and I'm going to answer them. So basically answering your questions. If you see in the show notes, if you look into the show notes of this episode, I have included the NGL link in the show notes. So if you guys listening want to contribute to our next episode with your own questions, personal or crochet, it's up to you to ask us anything. I will be as honest as I can. Let me know if your question is for me or for Mel. Because there are certain questions that was directed at Mel too. So leave them. Send me your questions. It's all anonymous, so you don't have to worry if you want your identity, hidden. I'm not gonna pry. I'm not gonna pay the premium to find out who you guys are. Okay, so leave your questions, and I'll include them as part of our episode. Our next episode is in 2 weeks' time, so there's more than enough time. Or you can go to our Instagram. We have a Linktree link where you can click on it, and the very first link will be to this Ask Us Anything thingy as well, and you can submit your questions there. Or if you want to just do it directly on Instagram, you can too. We are at Crooked Crochet SG. Don't do anything on Facebook with us because I rarely check Facebook. Just do it on Instagram. Or you can WhatsApp us at +65 9127 2743. If you want to tell me a little bit more, you want to have a little bit longer of a conversation with me, you can email us at crookedcrochetsg@gmail.com.
Because some of you guys send us really long, very detailed passages through emails, but I think it's great because it gives us more detail.
I love
answering
it because
your questions.
And it gives me a little bit more of a backstory. I have a better idea of where you're coming from.
Yes.
I get to understand the different backgrounds of everybody, and it's just, I like seeing different perspectives of things.
Exactly. We have so many international listeners as well. I love it when you guys introduce yourself as well before you ask your questions, who you are, where you're from.
And I want to say, I know that there are some people who have send us messages on Instagram recently, and I'm very sorry if I haven't gotten to replying. I am slowly cycling through these messages, so if I haven't replied you, it doesn't mean I haven't read it. I read every single one of them. I just need a little bit more time to get back to replying, because I know there are a few people that I haven't yet replied. But a lot of your messages are really, I can see that you take the time to send us those messages. So I don't want to give you a 2-second reply. I want to sit down and really read through them and give you my point of view and have a conversation with you. And so that takes a little bit of time for me, but I will come round to it, I promise. So with that, I'll let you guys go. Don't forget, again, leave your questions for us to be included in the next episode. Also, I hope you guys know this by now, but our next episode will not be next week. It will be the week after. And we will have one episode every 2 weeks now.
Yeah.
So I hope that gives you enough time to ask all the questions you want.
Looking forward to your questions.
And I hope that you guys have an awesome 2 weeks until we see you in the next episode. Bye.
Bye, guys.